So I'm Dr. Gary Collins, and this is Deborah Ashcraft. And for those of you who have found us on our website, I wanted to give you a little story about how the Regenesis program kind of all got started. It started off, I used to hand my patients little packets of information because I didn't have time to stand and talk to them during patient treatment time. So I developed these little packets to give away and on various subjects. And over a course of a couple of years, I had developed quite a few of those packages. And I'd entertained the idea of writing a book, and I'd even had some informational boot camps on the weekends that Debbie attended. We just called them boot camps. But in earnest, the Regenesis program, I guess, really started with Debbie. She was kind of the first one. She had come to see me. She had terrible joint pain. She was 260 plus pounds. She was overweight. She was walking with a cane. She was in a lot of pain. She had been to a lot of different doctors. She had come to me for those issues, and we were having a conversation one day fairly early into her treatment. What, about the fourth, maybe the fourth treatment or so? We had what we both called the look, and I'll never forget it, and she will never forget it because that day actually changed her life. But she had said to me that she was a diabetic, and I just kind of off the cuff said to her, "So well, you don't really have to be a diabetic." And then she looked up at me. I was getting ready to adjust her neck. She really hated having her neck adjusted. And so she looked up at me. When she looked up at me, we made eye contact, and I adjusted her neck for her. But and that was the beginning of this whole program for her, was that neck adjustment and the fact that I had said to her that you don't have to be a diabetic. And she had tried everything. And I'll let her tell you about where she was at that point in the office, four visits into her treatment plan.
4 visits into it, I was overweight, felt very bad. I never had a day that I ever felt well for 4 years before I came into Dr. Collins. And like you said, we had the moment and the look, and I'm thinking, well, everybody's always told me that if you were diabetic, you're always diabetic. There's no turning back. There's nothing you can do. You can take medication. You can try to watch what you eat. You can exercise. But I was always under the impression that, you know, I was diabetic and I was always going to be diabetic for the rest of my life, because I had been to many classes, gone through the diabetic education classes. I was the perfect little diabetic. I was doing the things that the program told me to do. I was eating the 45 carbs per meal and the 215 carbs snacks a day. And it just wasn't working. The only thing that was happening is I became fatter and fatter, and my A1Cs kept going higher and higher. And when Dr. Collins talked to me about his program, it was really different than anything that I'd ever heard before. So at that point, I'm thinking, well, I've tried everything, and I truly had. Everything that you can imagine that you've heard on television or read in books, and I had been reading, and crazy stuff that I'd come up with my own that we've all done that have tried to lose weight. I tried it all. And, yeah, I would lose some weight, but I turned right around and put it right back on. And so his concepts were different to me. They were things that I had not really read about. And I thought, well, okay, what have I got to lose? So I went home and took the program, took the information that he gave me, and looked at it and thought, okay, let's give this a try and see where we'll go. Really, a little bit skeptical, but after just a few weeks, it really started changing my life. Before I really even started losing that much weight, all of a sudden I was feeling better. And I thought, yeah, there's something to this. I can do this.
Yeah, you could see the light start to come on. She was getting, her energy was coming back. And then as she started to lose weight, the scales were starting to tell a story for her, and then her energy was improving. And so that really kept her on program. She was very excited about it because, like she said, she tried everything. And my concepts were just so alien to her, but these were truthful concepts. If you're a sugar diabetic, well, you have a sugar problem, and sugar is found in many forms. And to tell her to eliminate breads and wheat was just so strange to her, because she had been told by all of these programs and her doctors and her nutritionists that whole wheat and breads were healthy for diabetics and necessary. And so she was being the great little patient. But as she had started these concepts, and she was a little fat phobic, so to get her to use fat and to eat eggs, and she was worried about her cholesterol, because that's always the myth, is that eggs will raise your cholesterol. And so all of those things that she had been brainwashed to believe, we had to overcome those. And as she slowly started to overcome those, started seeing the results, and then trips back to her doctor and was revealing that she really was improving. Her A1Cs were coming down, her cholesterol panels were improving, everything was improving, and she was doing these things that were totally contrary to what she had been taught. And she was technically the first person to go through the Regenesis program, and I didn't even know I was putting her through a program. I was just putting her through some of the things that I had learned and was handing out to patients over the years. And I was working on the book, and as my mother was getting more and more sick, and this all started to happen just organically. So these meetings that we were having, Debbie and I, turned into weekend meetings that we were having. I called them boot camps, and we started these little boot camp things, and people from the community would come in, and I would charge a small fee for that, and I would feed them lunch. I'd feed them a good healthy lunch to show them that, you know, good food doesn't have to be tasteless, that actually good foods were quite tasty and good for you and easy to fix. So I taught those things to the boot camp, and then the book finally came out, and Debbie said, you know, you really need to do this thing out here in the community every week, kind of like just a weekly meeting for support. These people need support. So that's where the Regenesis meetings came into play that we do here locally. And now we're working on launching this thing online so that we can reach as many people as possible. And that's how you reached us today on our webpage. Mm-hmm. And so Debbie's story is very unique, but it's not uncommon that people out there have been taught the things that she has been taught. And so these concepts are slightly strange to someone who has come from that background. Mm-hmm. And I'll let her tell you what happened to her as she progressed through the program. She obviously lost over 120 pounds, and she got down under a weight that she hadn't been under for 25 years, 30 years. And so I'll let her finish telling you kind of what happened to her and where she is now.
Yeah. Going back to what you were talking about, being fat phobic, my breakfast used to, it would consist of oatmeal, which I was told that diabetic
fat-free oatmeal.
Fat-free oatmeal, using margarine or some of the
artificial
sweeteners and that kind of thing. Having whole wheat toast, skim milk, of course, on your cereal that you have.
It's making my arteries clog up here.
And bananas, for breakfast. So I switched from doing that and having my A1Cs continue to go higher, my blood sugar continue to go higher, to all of a sudden I was eating bacon and eggs for breakfast. Strange. And half a cup of blueberries, and all of a sudden my numbers started going down. And within 3 months of starting on the Regenesis program, I probably had lost about, I'm going to think probably about 40 pounds at that point when I went back to my doctor. And I went back mostly just to see where my A1Cs were at, because I was interested to see where was I at in the process, because I'm thinking to myself, okay, is this really working? And I go back and they check my A1Cs, and she comes in and she said, you're no longer diabetic. You're not even in the diabetic range anymore. So that was a great victory, and that took me 3 months to get to that point, and which is not long at all. And that was without any kind of, diabetic drugs or anything, taking insulin, anything like that. That was just purely from changing my diet, and that's all that it took for me.
And that look on her face, I mean, she went through, there was quite a metamorphosis watching Debbie actualize as she came through the program. I always call it watching the flower blossom. We were watching the flower blossom with her. She came back, and a grin on her face when she said, when she told me that her doctor had said, you're no longer diabetic. She was ecstatic. And then as she started reaching her milestones, when she got up to close to that 100-pound of weight loss, and she was about 2 pounds away, and the weight just stopped. So she had kind of plateaued there temporarily. It was really hard to keep her on track. So after about 3 weeks, she went rumbling past that 100-pound mark. And then from that point, she lost another 20-25 pounds, up to 120-some pounds of weight loss. And she's managed to keep that weight off for over 4 years now, because she continues to do the program. She's just kind of on what I call, she's on cruise control now. She knows that she knows. Her shopping routes have all changed. It's just part of her day. She knows where to shop. She knows what to buy. Those foods are in her house. And so this has become a lifestyle for her. And that is the ultimate goal for the program, is for this to become a lifestyle. And not to revert back to the old things. Once you lose the weight and get feeling better, it makes no sense to revert back to the things that got you there in the first place. One thing that I had to do for Debbie, as I do with most of the participants that she's very good at now as well, is educating them over these myths about how healthy whole grains and low fat and no eggs and using artificial sweeteners. Every diabetic that I get in my office, or people that are overweight, are coming in here trying to lose weight or been battling weight problems, have these preconceived notions that they've been educated by their televisions, or frankly sometimes by their doctors or nutritionists, and that they should be choosing the artificial sweeteners and the diet drinks. And my program, no drinks. Soft drinks are bad for you in any form. Diet drinks are the regular ones. So we get you off all that, but we explain why and what it's doing to you. And those were the things that we did for Debbie, and why eggs are not bad for you, and why eggs do not raise your cholesterol. How inflammation raises your cholesterol. We teach people where inflammation comes from. Inflammation is the problem more than the cholesterol. So your body needs quality cholesterol, and I had to educate her about that. And I get the look from patients when I start talking to them about eggs and how healthy eggs can be for your cholesterol level, because that's just totally contrary to what they've been taught. And so this is part of the journey that Debbie went through, was overcoming those myths and things that she had been taught about nutrition from her television and her doctors.
And that's one thing that our classes do. We kind of hold your hand through this and step you through week by week. And that's one great thing about the classes, is we have a different subject every week. We kind of step you through. We lead you, we guide you. You go out of there with some understanding. If you have questions, you can come back and ask. So that's one of the things that the classes are so valuable for. And hopefully that this media is going to be valuable for, that we will help people to be able to learn how to do these things.
Yeah, and we talk about things like eating out. I mean, it's hard to eat out, so it's good to have a little small cooler that when you get ready to go somewhere that you know they're not gonna have anything you can eat, throw some things in the cooler. And say you're going to a barbecue, and there's gonna be a bunch of stuff there that you can't eat. Take your stuff to put on the grill. Take you some coleslaw. Take you some little squares of cheese, or some nuts, or some chopped up vegetables, or some acceptable foods from the Regenesis program, so that you're not sitting there at a barbecue with nothing to eat. So you have to start thinking ahead, and Debbie's very good at that now. When they hit the road, she has her little cooler ready to go, and she has things to eat when she goes places. Like the wedding thing where she ate the meatball and it put her back for 3 days. I mean, she didn't realize how bad there was some wheat in the meatball. And so the wheat, just a little bit enough to make a meatball, put her down for 3 days. So she's painfully aware now of what these foods do to you, that are these so-called healthy foods do to you. But the Regenesis program, we talk about emotional eating, which is a big problem, especially for women. Men do it too, but especially for women. We were talking earlier about how, when women walk through the grocery line to check out, they got these pictures of these anorexic looking women, and that's what women think they're supposed to look like. And so the social pressures on women are much greater than they are men. A man, he's just kind of husky. Well, a woman's fat. The same weight difference, a man's husky and a woman's fat. So the social pressures are much greater for women, and we address that and we talk about that. And we open the class up for discussions, which can get very emotional at times, but those are very, very powerful classes. And that's part of what this local program has done. And so we want to be able to put some of this out on the web page, and that's the reason that we're doing these videos, is so that you can see that this is a very real thing, a very organic thing that just started here almost by accident.